Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Scott Bevan, and on behalf of the Chairman of the Council of the Australian War Memorial, Mr. Kerry Stokes, the Director, the Honourable Dr. Brendan Nelson, Council members and staff, welcome and thank you for joining us here this morning on this historic occasion. We would like to acknowledge the dignitaries who are joining us on the dais and the representatives of the Diplomatic Corps. And we welcome the school students in attendance and the veterans who have served, those who are still serving, and the families who support them. At 11 a.m. on the 11th of November 1918, the guns on the Western Front fell silent after 4 long years of war. The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month attained a special significance in the post-war years. That moment when hostilities ceased on the Western Front became universally associated with the remembrance of those who died in the war. The Allied nations chose this day and time for the commemoration of their war dead. Well, 25 years ago, on the 11th of November 1993, the focus of national attention was on the ceremony here at the Australian War Memorial. On that day, the 75th anniversary of the armistice, the remains of an unknown Australian soldier exhumed from the Adelaide Cemetery at Villebrequin, in the heart of the former First World War battlefields in France, was entombed with full military honours in the Hall of Memory. Remembrance Day ceremonies were conducted simultaneously in towns, in villages and cities all over the country, culminating at that moment of burial at 11 a.m. On Remembrance Day in 2013, that towering eulogy delivered in 1993 by then Prime Minister, the Honourable Paul Keating, was unveiled in bronze at the entrance to the Hall of Memory. The key phrase from the eulogy was inscribed onto the front of the tomb: "He is all of them, and he is one of us." The eulogy was read at the last post ceremony that evening and on every Remembrance Day since, and it will be read again at the last post ceremony this evening. It also forms the chorus of Spirit of the Anzacs, which musician and songwriter Mr. Lee Kernaghan gave the nation in 2015 and will perform at the conclusion of today's ceremony. And we would like to acknowledge Mr. Keating, who is here with us today. The national ceremony will now commence with the Tri-Service Guard of Honour, mounted by Australia's Federation Guard, marching onto the parade ground, accompanied by the band of the Royal Military College Duntroop. The Guard and Band are now in position, and we await the arrival of the Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Scott Morrison and Mrs. Jenny Morrison. The Prime Minister and Mrs. Morrison will be received by the Chairman of the Council of the Australian War Memorial, Mr. Kerry Stokes, Ms. Christine Simpson-Stokes, the Honourable Dr. Brendan Nelson and Ms. Gillian Adamson. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand. Ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome the Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Scott Morrison and Mrs. Jenny Morrison. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing while the Catafalque Party mount at the Stone of Remembrance. The tri-service Catafalque Party is provided by Australia's Federation Guard. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. The war of 1914 to 1918 was the largest and most costly conflict that the world had known. The Great War involved the mobilisation of 70 million personnel in uniform worldwide. They fought in a global conflict that drew in more than 100 countries, caused the disintegration of old empires, and reshaped the political order for much of the 20th century. It left between 9 million and 13 million people dead. More than 1/3 of all the soldiers killed were missing or had no known graves. Many millions more were maimed physically or damaged mentally, adding to the enormous cost to all nations involved. Well, this morning, diplomatic representatives from countries around the world are also here to pay tribute to sons and daughters who didn't return and who were forever changed. The loss of these men, women, and children is a reminder that there is nothing glorious about war. Those called upon to fight know that better than anyone. But they also know that when all else fails, it is necessary to fight for our liberties and for the truths by which we live. That cause is timeless and it's noble. Today, at this marking of the centenary of the armistice and the end of the First World War, we remember and consider what has been lost to us, but also what has been gained. It is an opportunity to reflect on the values we live by and to recommit ourselves to peace. From the parade ground in front of the Stone of Remembrance, playing the didgeridoo was Wing Commander Jonathan Lilly. Wing Commander Lilly is a member of the Worimi people of Williamtown, just north of Newcastle in New South Wales. The First World War film footage you are about to see was taken by brave, intrepid figures like Ashmead Bartlett, Frank Hurley, Herbert Baldwin, and Hubert Wilkins. They carried their hand-operated wooden cameras across the shores of Gallipoli, across the mud of the Western Front and the deserts of Palestine to capture images of remarkable people. This fragile film would then be transported back to England to be developed, edited, and eventually screened to all those waiting back home. Well, this film lets us see in motion the experiences of those who served and those who were lost. It reveals the weight that hangs around a man's shoulders as he carries a wounded mate. It shows the long roads these men marched day after day after day. And most importantly, it shares the faces of all those men and women smiling, waving, and acting up for the camera, just hoping to be seen by loved ones back home. And it preserves the faces and the spirit of those who never made it. This footage is an indelible, moving record of the experiences of those who served in the Great War. Accompanying music is first by John Schumann's rendition of A Boy on the Run, followed by the Royal Australian Navy Band's performance of Old Passchendaele.
He was running like a native across the creek, singing in the field in the wind and the sun. And there he goes, racing down the street, just like a boy on the run. And he takes a stone and he throws it in the water, and he watches the circles as they slowly fade, and he fills the air with sudden laughter as he thinks of all the plans he made. And he's scared of the future, in need of the past, just sitting here watching his hourglass. And down the street, the accordions are calling, and go away, boy, there's nothing for you here. And he can hear the buildings falling as he's stripping away all of his years. Running like a native across the creek, singing in the field in the wind and the sun. And there he goes, racing down the street, just like a boy on the run. And there he goes, racing down the street, like a boy on the run.
Passchendaele, what have you become? Your gentle fields of green, a scarred and bloody sea. Oh, Passchendaele, our best and bravest sons, from far across the sea, lie fallen at your feet. Call to the firing line, stumble through the dead and dying, shell holes and bitter freezing rain tumbles down. Men of the 3rd Brigade, huddled in the break of day, rise from the mud and storm the guns on the enemy. Those of us survived, ordered over the top, hung up in tangled wire, cut down in machine gun fire. Cries for the stretcher bearers, God help us all. Oh, passionate, what have you become? The gentle fields of green, scarred and bloody sea. Oh, passionate, our best and bravest sons, from far across the sea, lie fallen at your feet. Officers have all been slain, thousands are lost and nothing gained. All I see is desolation. Oh, Passchendaele, what have you become? Your gentle fields of green, a scarred and bloody sea. Oh, Passchendaele, our best and bravest sons, from far across the sea, lie fallen at your feet.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand as Mr. John King, representing the Returned and Services League of Australia, recites the Ode. After the Ode, the last post will be sounded, followed by a minute's silence and the Wreath.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Guard! Order! Arms! Guard! Stand at A! Guard! Stand! Easy!
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. This year, the commemorative address will be delivered by the Honourable Scott Morrison, Prime Minister of Australia.
Silence. At last, silence. A silence from that day to this that beckons a prayer for a dawn of peace and a lasting peace. On this day, a century ago, as citizens across the Allied nations celebrated the end of war, Australia's official war correspondent, Charles Bean, chose to mark the armistice solemnly. Returning to Fromelles in northern France, where 2 years earlier, Australian soldiers had fought their first major action on the Western Front, Bean walked in silence over the trampled battlefield. We found the old no man's land simply full of our dead, he wrote. The skulls and bones and torn uniforms were lying about everywhere. On that day, perhaps being reflected on the unfulfilled dreams of the almost 2,000 Australians who had fallen in a single day, or the suffering of the more than 3,000 who had been wounded. Perhaps he thought of the tens of thousands of our war dead lying on the steep hills of Gallipoli, or on the blood-soaked fields of Flanders, and in the searing deserts of the east. Perhaps he dwelt on the grief of families who would never again embrace loved ones, or on the loss to communities across the nation of a generation that had made victory possible. As we commemorate the centenary of the armistice and cast our minds back over the years, we know too well the deep scars of war and long to prevent them from touching an Australian soul. Our human predisposition, our Australian predisposition, is for peace. It is to be in accord with family, with friends, neighbours, community, to love, to live. That's why war is always a failure of our humanity. Yet, we know there are times when even the most peaceful of men and women are called upon to defend the beliefs they live by. And there have been too many such times over the course of the past century. This is not to say that our reflections on those conflicts must be unquestioning, but the sacrifice demands that we reflect, ponder, and learn from every conflict, because that's what free societies like Australia do. to learn from the past so that we can better navigate the changing currents of our own times, for our own children and for the next generations. Over this past century, I believe the tenor of our conflicts has tended towards upholding the highest ideals of humankind, to preserve freedom, to safeguard democracy, to stand against tyranny. And we have done so at a great cost. It is easy from the vantage point of a century to lose sight of the sacrifices made in our name. Much harder to cross the span of generations and put ourselves in the boots of someone landing in Anzac Cove, or charging into Beersheba, or struggling against the rattle of death on Flanders fields. Those who fought in the Great War had the same and normal flaws and frailties of any other Australian, of any other generation. Yet their selflessness at the darkness of times has set them apart for eternity in our nation's consciousness. Andrew Gillison, a chaplain, heard cries coming from no man's land while in a trench at Gallipoli. Despite having been warned about the snipers, he tried to crawl out to rescue the wounded soldier, called. He did know what the risk was, but he didn't know what it was to do the right thing, and he lost his life. Alice Chisholm, a mother of 5, sailed to Egypt to be near her son who had been wounded. She stayed to set up flood canteens and shelters for Allied troops serving in the Middle East. And after the war, she supported our diggers by establishing a returned soldiers club in Gold. William Rawlings, a horse trainer from near Warrnambool, risked his life to clear a path for his fellow infantrymen during an attack at Wallencourt on the Western Front. He was one of 1,000 Indigenous Australians who volunteered when their country did not properly recognise them or their people. And he would die just a few months before the armistice. They saw our country not just for what it was then, but what they dreamed it would once become. We often say that men and women like this were fearless, but I actually don't believe that. Because bravery is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to commit to a purpose greater than your fear. That is the moment when fear is conquered. They feared greatly but acted nonetheless. And it is this that embodies our highest aspirations as a nation and as people. To live for others, even when to do so is unimaginably hard, and the cost extreme. Tragically, the hardships continued even for those who rode out the storms of war. Many suffered the physical marks of battle, yet more the deep emotional scars of memory. Thousands of our servicemen and women would die from injury as well as despair within a decade of coming home. Their struggles were as much an act of patriotism and love of our country as their enlisted service, and that is true to this day for those who wrestle daily with these memories. Despite hopes that it would usher in a lasting peace, the Great War was sadly not the war to end all wars. By the time this memorial here to the Great War, as was originally proposed, was over, another war was upon us. The Australian original Anzacs, who left our shores for Gallipoli, have been followed by those who fought in the jungles of Dakota, struggled in the mud of Long Tan, battled in the dust of Uruskan, and risked their lives in the skies over Germany and the waters of the Mediterranean and the Pacific. To all who have served in our nation in wars and conflicts and peacekeeping operations, to those of you who serve to this day, here or all around the world, we owe you a debt of gratitude as a nation and as individual Australians. Through it all, we can't avert our gaze from citizen soldiers of the First World War, though, who define so much of who we are as a people today. They believed in country over self. They believed in each other when all seemed lost. They respected the chain of command, but it was their character that drove their actions as it is today. They laughed, they smoked, they told stories, they wept. They are as earthy as the land in which they were born. And though it was hard to see during the fog of war, and even harder to appreciate the scale of their sacrifice, they nevertheless changed the world together. As Charles Bean did 100 years ago, today we solemnly commemorate the armistice in silence, a silence that beckons and prays for peace. We honour the 102,000 who have lost their lives in war for us. For our tomorrows, they go there today. In silence, we commit ourselves to standing by those who have returned home. In silence, we honour the great leadership of General Monash. And in silence at the hour when war subsided, we resolve to sustain the peace today and beyond. So that when the bugle calls, we will, in the words of our great Australian poet, stand foursquare to the tempest, whatever the battering hail. No foe shall ever gather our hearts or sit on our stockyard. Lest we forget.
Prime Minister, thank you for your words. Wreaths will now be laid in the following order. The Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Scott Morrison. National President of the War Widows Guild of Australia, Mrs. Meg Green, and accompanying her, Widow of Contemporary Operations, Ms. Gwen Cherney. Chief Minister of the Australian Capital Territory, Mr. Andrew Barr. Representing the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Ms. Gay Brockwell. President of the Senate, Senator the Honourable Scott Ryan. Chief Justice of the High Court of Australia, the Honourable Chief Justice Susan Keefe. Leader of the Federal Opposition, the Honourable Bill Shorten. Chief of Defence Force, General Angus Campbell. The Chairman of the Council of the Australian War Memorial, Mr. Kerry Stokes, and representing the Returned and Services League of Australia, Mr. John King. Chief of Navy, Vice Admiral Michael Noonan, representing the Chief of Army, Major General Justin Elwood, and Chief of Air Force, Air Marshal Leo Davies. National President of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Veterans and Services Association, Squadron Leader Gary Oakley. And accompanying the National President is today's didgeridoo player, Wing Commander Jonathan Lilly. National President of the Naval Association of Australia, Commander Terry Makins. National President of the Air Force Association, Group Captain Carl Schiller. And National President of the Australian Federation of Totally and Permanently Incapacitated Ex-Servicemen and Women, Ms. Pat McKay. Chairman of Legacy Australia, Legatee Richard Cranmer, and Junior Legatees, Ms. Anna Grice and Ms. Catherine Grice. Ladies and gentlemen, as the Guard come to attention, would you please stand for the hymn, O God, Our Help in Ages Past, led by musician Tony Maxfield and accompanied by the band of the Royal Military College Duntrue.
God! God! Attention! Judge!
The embassies and high commissions of more than 100 countries are located here in Canberra, and the diplomatic corps are an active and integral part of the fabric of the national capital. Members of the diplomatic corps will now lay wreaths in order of precedence on behalf of the citizens of their countries. This gesture symbolises a unified desire for peace and the respect shared by all nations for the memory of those who were lost during the war and other operations. Timor-Leste, Vanuatu, Tonga, Estonia, Malta, Romania, New Zealand, Slovak Republic. Serbia, Sweden, Kenya, Guatemala, United Kingdom, Japan, Mongolia, Spain. Sri Lanka, Canada, Egypt, Ukraine, Botswana, Greece, Argentina, Ethiopia. Germany, Netherlands, Singapore, Myanmar, Russia, Switzerland, Denmark, Ireland. Austria, Jordan, Côte d'Ivoire, Morocco, India, Ecuador, South Africa, Afghanistan. Bosnia and Herzegovina, Cyprus, Nepal, France, Georgia, Belgium, Nigeria, European Union. Malaysia, Mauritius, Uganda, Ghana, Israel, Bangladesh, Republic of Korea, Thailand. Italy, Zambia, Iraq, Fiji, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Norway. Slovenia, Hungary, Lebanon, United States of America, Papua New Guinea, Czech Republic, Kosovo. Bulgaria, Croatia, Kuwait, Uruguay, United Arab Emirates, Solomon Islands. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd now like to introduce Mr. John Schumann and the Vagabond crew, accompanied by Mr. Lee Kernighan, as they perform John's arrangement of Waltzing Matilda and Tom Troutbeck's Blues. As it's performed, representative students from those schools that are joining us here today will place knitted poppies at the Stone of Remembrance.
To live with me.
Gentlemen, that was wonderful. And thank you to the students as well for placing those knitted poppies at the stone of remembrance. At war's end, families living with inconsolable grief were tasked with finding the words for headstones on graves that most would never see. Within the allotted 66 characters, their words were to give meaning where, ultimately, there was none. For a son, a father, a husband or a daughter, never to be seen again. The Honourable Mr. Bill Short, Leader of the Federal Opposition, will now read a selection of those poignant epitaphs that speak to us of love and of loss.
Too dearly loved to ever be forgotten, mother and father. 2nd Lieutenant A.H. Galloway, 32nd Battalion, 16 February 1917, aged 28, Bernafay Wood Cemetery, France. Never mind me, boys, save Sergeant Beaton. Trooper George Richard Johnson, 2nd Australian Light Horse Regiment, 10 November 1915, Embarkation Pier Cemetery. His brother Will is buried at St Omer, 2 splendid boys. Gunner R.G. Carlsberg, 111th Australian Field Artillery Brigade, 24 April 1918, aged 24, Frechencourt Communal, France. He gave his life for another, a brave stretcher bearer. Private H.L. Lander, 56th Battalion, 5 December 1916, aged 22, Healy Station, France. He gave his life, his all. He, like a soldier, fell, our dear daddy. Company Sergeant Major W. Love, 24 Battalions, 31st of August 1918, aged 43, Perron Communal Cemetery Extension, France. William Love was the husband of Margaret Love of Bendigo. They had 5 children. On Fame's eternal camping ground, their silent tents are spread. Captain Clarence Smith Jeffries, Victoria Cross, 34th Battalion, 12 October 1917, aged 23, Tynecott Cemetery, Belgium. Love's greatest gift, remembrance. Private L.J. Taylor, 22nd Battalion, 5 August 1916, aged 20, Serre Road Cemetery No. 2, France. During the Great War, she gave her life for sick and wounded at Rouen. Nurse Louisa Riddle, 31 August 1918, Saint-Sever Cemetery, France. I gave my son, he gave his all, his life for Australia and Empire. Private Ian Donald Hart, 60th Battalion, 27th November 1916, age 30. Guards Cemetery, Les Boeufs, France. He gave his life that others might live. Private John Simpson Kirkpatrick, 3rd Field Ambulance, 19 May 1915, age 22, Beach Cemetery, Gallipoli. He gave his youth that the world might grow old in peace. Lance Corporal Harold Gilks, 2nd Battalion, 24th of June 1918, age 20. La Creule Military Cemetery, Harsbrook. I fought and died in the Great War to end all wars. Have I died in vain? Sergeant Philip James Ball, Military Medal, 24th Battalion, 28th of March 1918, aged 21, Villers-Bretonneux Military Cemetery.
Mr. Shorten, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to again introduce Mr. Lee Kernaghan to sing what we consider the Australian anthem of the centenary of the First World War, Spirit of the Anzacs. Inspired by the letters and diaries of Australian servicemen and women held here at the Australian War Memorial, the chorus of this song is drawn from the eulogy for the unknown Australian soldier, and it speaks to more than a century of Australian service. And the song has been entirely for the benefit of legacy and soldiery.
We do not know this Australian's name, and we never will. We do not know his rank or his battalion. He may have been one of those who believed the Great War would be an adventure too grand to miss. He may have felt that he would never live down the shame of not going. The unknown soldier honours the memory of all those men and women who laid down their lives for Australia. We've lost more than 100,000 lives, but we've gained a legend and a deeper understanding of what it means to be Australian.
She is one of us.
Lee Kernaghan. And Lee, thank you for that moving performance. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and join in the singing of the national anthem.
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are young and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts, all beauty rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Guard! Shoulder! Off!
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing as the Catafalque Party dismounts the Stone of Remembrance.
Guard! Order! Off!
Catapult party, inward, turn. Catapult party, work, march.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. One of the Australian War Memorial's centenary initiatives has been the Commemorative Cross Program. Now, this project draws on the commemorative experiences of students visiting the memorial by capturing, in their own words, individual reflections on those who have sacrificed their lives in war and other operations. These thoughts take the form of short messages on wooden crosses, which are then laid on war graves where Australian servicemen and women are buried overseas. More than 75,000 of these crosses have been placed on Australian graves in 39 countries with the assistance of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Floral tributes incorporating these small wooden crosses will now be placed at the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier in the Hall of Memory by the Honourable Scott Morrison, the Honourable Bill Shorten, General Angus Campbell, Mr Kerry Stokes, the Honourable Dr Brendan Nelson, their partners and guests. And they'll be joined by the Honourable Paul Keating on this special anniversary of the entombment of the unknown Australian soldier.